Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or the Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be going in depth into my top 24 running back rankings and tiers for the 2024 fantasy football season. But before we can get on into these running back rankings and tiers, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you leave a like on today's video. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. So without further ado, let's get into my top 24 running back rankings and tiers for the 2024 fantasy football season. We begin with the S tier at the running back position with running backs 1 through 3. At number 1, we have Christian McCaffrey of the San Francisco 49ers. Now, Christian McCaffrey just recently signed a 2-year contract extension worth $38 million with the 49ers. This is going to be yet another huge season for Christian McCaffrey. It doesn't take Albert Einstein level of knowledge to figure that out. Christian McCaffrey is on an elite offense, and Christian McCaffrey is one of the best, if not the best, running back in the National Football League, and the team clearly thought so when they gave him that contract extension. Running back 1 last year in PPR, number 1 in PPR points per game, 16 games played, ranking 2nd in carries, 1st in rushing yards, 4th in targets, 3rd in receptions, 2nd in receiving yards, and 1st in total touchdowns. In terms of efficiency, very efficient back, 5th in true yards per carry, 3rd in yards per touch, 1st in yards created, and 4th in dominator rating. I think Christian McCaffrey could easily do it again as the running back 1 in fantasy football. This is just a guy in one of the best situations in the NFL, and putting a running back as skilled as Christian McCaffrey in such a good situation with such a genius head coach in Kyle Shanahan in terms of the rushing attack, Christian McCaffrey is going to be amazing yet again. The only argument against Christian McCaffrey is, oh boy, he's getting a little bit old. But at the end of the day, the team still clearly believes in him. Like I've said multiple times, they gave him a huge contract extension, and I think that Christian McCaffrey is going to be able to impress yet again, and he would be my number 1 overall pick in drafts this season. At number 2, we got Breece Hall of the New York Jumbo Jets. Now, the entire Jets offense fell off the edge of the earth, Christopher Columbus style, the second that Aaron Rodgers went down, the second that Zach Wilson and Trevor Siemian had to be the starting quarterback. Everything went wrong for everyone outside of Breece Hall. Now, last season definitely would have been a whole lot better, and maybe Breece Hall would have even finished as the running back 1 if Aaron Rodgers was able to stay healthy, but without Aaron Rodgers, Breece Hall was still really good. Running back 2 in PPR, 6 in PPR points per game, playing in 17 games last season, ranking 14th in carries, 13th in rushing yards, 1st in targets, 1st in receptions, 1st in receiving yards, and 12th in total touchdowns. I think the total touchdown number has the upside to double as long as Aaron Rodgers just plays somewhat decently. He was 38th in true yards per carry. Sure, yuck, that sucks, but the offensive line didn't really help him out all that much, and the team, like I've previously stated, like we all know, was dog shit once Rodgers got hurt. 11th in yards per touch, 3rd in yards created, and 1st in dominator rating. I believe that this is going to be the best year yet out of Breece Hall, and Breece Hall did all of this coming off of a severe injury. They brought in Dalvin Cook last season to maybe ease Breece Hall's way in, and then Breece Hall kicked the doors in like the Kool-Aid man. Oh yeah, kicked the fucking wall down and dominated. I think he is even better this season, and I am ecstatic to see what Breece Hall does coming into the year fully healthy and hopefully with 17 games of Aaron Rodgers. At number 3, we got Bijan Robinson of the Atlanta Falcons. Now, Bijan Robinson was drafted very highly in the 2023 NFL Draft. We liked him a lot in fantasy football, and he was a little bit of a disappointment. Now, he wasn't disappointing because he looked like a bust. He looked like a certified bum out there. He actually looked great. Shout out to Tony the Tiger. The problem is that Arthur Smith is too much of a dumbass to actually use him correctly. So it was the running back 9 in PPR, 16 in PPR points per game. Wasn't really seeing the correct usage, only 12.6 carries per game. He ranked 19th in carries, 15th in rushing yards, 3rd in targets, 6th in receptions, 4th in receiving yards, and 20th in total touchdowns. In terms of efficiency, 9th in yards per touch, 5th in yards created. I think we see a much better season out of Bijan this year with Kirk Cousins there, with a new offensive scheme. And Bijan Robinson himself brought up how with their new system, they're looking to use him in a Christian McCaffrey role. And the second that I read that, all of the blood started flowing downstairs. I popped a little bit of a chub for Bijan Robinson. No Diddy. I'm very excited about Bijan Robinson this season. And I think all of these guys could easily be the running back one. I'm still going to stick with McCaffrey because he really hasn't ever done me wrong unless he got hurt, knock on wood. Moving now to the A tier, we begin with running back number 4, and that is going to be Saquon Barkley of the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, I see a lot of nonsense being spewed about Saquon Barkley. People are nervous about Saquon Barkley because Jalen Hurts is going to be stealing all of his touchdowns because of the tush push and a bunch of other bullshit, a bunch of other malarkey. Look, I get that Jalen Hurts is going to tush push a couple of touchdowns in there, but have you ever considered that maybe the reason why Jalen Hurts was getting so many tush push touchdowns last season was because of the fact that Kelsey was there as the center? Another reason, because DeAndre Swift is built like Rey Mysterio, okay? Saquon Barkley is a big man. Pause, right? Saquon Barkley is built like a Greek god statue. They are going to jam Saquon Barkley down the defense's throat on an offense with a great offensive line, on an offense that is going to be raining down points onto their opponent. We are just, as a fantasy football community, greatly overthinking things. We're getting way too cute. Saquon Barkley could easily be ranked even inside of the S tier potentially. I feel so confident in Saquon. I get that he ended up being disappointing last year, but so was the Giants offense as a whole. Once Daniel Jones went down, everything kind of went tits up. Now it was fun when Tommy DeVito, the Italian stallion, was throwing some dimes, but at the end of the day, things didn't go great there. Running back 9 in PPR points per game for Barkley, running back 13 in PPR, right? Not a great season, but he was still 3rd in dominator rating. He was still able to score 10 total touchdowns, nearly 1,000 rushing yards, and this is still a guy that could get 4 or 5 targets per game. Maybe the crazy amount of target share won't be there as much because of how much Jalen Hurts likes to run the ball, but I still wouldn't completely rule out the fact that he could average 4+ targets every single game. This is an Eagles offense that you're going to want pieces of. And again, I really think people are severely overthinking Saquon. At number 5, we got Jahmyr Gibbs, running back 10 last season in PPR, 8 in PPR points per game. Now, Jahmyr Gibbs is a guy that has that crazy upside to just drop his nuts on the defense's face and score 25+ points in any given matchup. This is a guy that wasn't even fully integrated into the offense last season and was still able to rip off 11 total touchdowns, over 300 receiving yards, and over 900 rushing yards. He ranked 7th in true yards per carry. He was a guy that while David Montgomery was still taking away the goal line touches, while David Montgomery was still the main guy, was still very successful. Now, I don't think that David Montgomery is going to fall off the face of planet Earth, but I do think that Jahmyr Gibbs is going to start scratching away, itching his way into more of a higher workload in this offense. 2nd year in this offense, one of the best offensive lines, a great offense in the NFL. To me, I think some people are also kind of overthinking things with Jahmyr Gibbs. At number 6, we got Jonathan Taylor. Now, Jonathan Taylor, it's been a couple of years removed from that really huge season out of Jonathan Taylor, but he still has it in him. Now, I think there's going to be another offense that is going to be tremendous at running the football with Anthony Richardson and Jonathan Taylor. You do a read option, and you frankly will not be able to stop this at all. The same thing could be said about Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley. Jonathan Taylor is one of the best running backs in the NFL, despite what his stats last season will have shown you. In terms of efficiency, he was 6th in dominator rating and was top 12 in PPR points per game. Coming into the season, injured. We saw Zach Moss dominate 50 Shades of Grey style in this offense with Anthony Richardson. So you better believe Jonathan Taylor will be able to do the same thing. Moving into the B tier, we got running back 7 through 9. And Josh Jacobs is a running back that I'm severely higher on compared to the rest of the fantasy football industry. I love Josh Jacobs this season. Now, I fully understand that Josh Jacobs isn't going to get the most insane workload in Green Bay, like the one he had in Viva Las Vegas when he had that huge year. And I don't think that that's really going to matter. They're still going to use Marshawn Lloyd. They're going to use A.J. Dillon. But Josh Jacobs is going to be the main back there on one of the better offenses in the National Football League. They are going to score so many touchdowns, and Josh Jacobs is just going to fall ass backwards into the end zone. He ranked 7th in dominator rating last season while averaging the most amount of defenders in the box. So they were loading the box up knowing that Josh Jacobs was coming, and the guy was still able to have a solid season. He played 13 games played last season. He played the first 13 games and then missed the end of last season with a quad strain. He ranked 11th in carries, 24th in rushing yards, 19th in targets, 24th in receptions, 19th in receiving yards, and 24th in total touchdowns. Going from the Raiders offense last year to the Packers offense is a complete and utter 180. I believe in Jordan. Love me tender, love me sweet. I believe that this is the next big offense in the National Football League. They got rid of Aaron Jones for a reason. They want to use Josh Jacobs, and A.J. Dillon can't even hold this guy's jockstrap. I think Marshawn Lloyd is halfway decent. And again, while he might not get that insane workload, Josh Jacobs doesn't need it, in my opinion, to be very successful this season. And the best part about Jacobs is you don't even have to draft him in the top 2 rounds, because a lot of the time he comes off the board in the 3rd round, sometimes even the 4th round, when people are just being a little bit stupid. At number 8, we got D-Rock Henry, Tractor Cito of the Baltimore Ravens, running back 8 in PPR, running back 16 in PPR points per game, tied with Bijan Robinson. Now, if I told you 5 years ago that Derrick Henry was the running back, or maybe not 5 years ago, 3 years ago, for instance, let's just use 3 years ago, I told you that Derrick Henry was on the Baltimore Ravens team now, right? You take that version of Derrick Henry, you got the Ravens offense that's very exciting with Lamar Jackson. You would have blown a wad in your pants thinking, oh my God, I'm so excited about Derrick Henry. But now, because Derrick Henry's a little bit older, because Derrick Henry is falling off ever so slightly, people are overthinking Derrick Henry. People are fucking ageist. They hate this guy because he's getting older. I get that he's not going to be catching a bunch of balls like his name was Riley Reed. He's not going to be taking balls to the face, right? Maybe he will actually, technically, because he's not the best at catching the ball. It might hit off his hands and smack him in the domicile. But at the end of the day, he doesn't need a crazy amount of targets. He was averaging 2.1 targets per game. If he gets that again this season, I would be happy. He is the clear workhorse running back on an amazing offense. This is a guy that could easily score 20 plus touchdowns. They had Gus Edwards hitting the fucking gritty in the end zone all the time. And it's not because Gus Edwards is this prolific running back. It's because he was attached to the Lamar Jackson, the Harbaugh system in Baltimore. So I get, Nick, Derrick Henry isn't as good as he used to be. Sure. But when he's ripping off fucking 16, 17, 18 carries a game, and he is ripping defenses' heads off, Derrick Henry is going to be good again. We are overthinking things. Number 1 in carries last year, number 2 in rushing yards, 6th in total touchdowns. He was phased out of games last year because of how down bad the Titans were. The Titans were getting schmacked, Will Smith style, right? So imagine what he's going to do in an offense where they're up in the game and they're able to run the ball gently down the stream. 10th in yards created, 9th in evaded tackles, 8th in breakaway run rate, 5th in dominator rating. Stop overthinking Derrick Henry. He is incredibly safe while also having a crazy amount of upside. At number 9 to close out the B tier, we got Isaiah Pacheco. Now, towards the end of last season is when Isaiah Pacheco came alive. Now, he was solid all season long, but towards the end of the season, especially in that playoff push, the Super Bowl W, he was great. This is one of the best offenses in the NFL. Now, I understand that Pacheco isn't this McCaffrey-level back that's seen a lot of targets in his career. But without Jerick McKinnon there, he is going to see that uptick in targets. Pacheco was the running back, 14 in PPR points per game last year, 15 in PPR on the season. He was 12th in yards created, 15th in dominated rating, 11th in breakaway run rate, and 2nd in catch rate. Again, at that late season push in the playoffs, Isaiah Pacheco was unstoppable. If Isaiah Pacheco is able to play like that, is able to see that amount of target share for a whole season, he could be a top 5 running back. Again, he is linked to one of the best, if not the best, offenses in the NFL. He is standing side by side with Patrick fucking Mahomes. Again, don't get cute. Stop overthinking things. Pacheco is another guy that you can find much later for really no reason, if I'm being honest. Like, I don't understand the reason that's why people are scared of Pacheco. Now we move into the C tier, running backs 10 through 13. Now, I love Devin A-Chain of the Miami Dolphins. I'm a Miami Dolphins fan. I love the Dolphins, and I love Devin A-Chain. And I think you should be drafting him. The one thing that keeps him out of the B tier is I just feel there's a little bit more safety with the running backs ahead of him. Now, I think Devin A-Chain, just like Jahmyr Gibbs, we're going to see him scratch and claw his way into having a bigger cut, a bigger piece of the pie offensively. Raheem Mostert is 1 year older, and that dude is already basically ancient at this point. He's getting close to the age where he's going to start the mummification process. Devin A-Chain was incredibly legit last season. The only worry I'm seeing about people with A-Chain is, oh, Nick, what happens if he gets hurt again? What happens if any of these running backs get hurt, okay, guys? Unless there is a genuine reason for me to believe that there's a guarantee that they are going to get hurt again, I am not going to panic. A guy that you want to worry about is Kyren Williams, the running back 12. But Devin A-Chain, you don't need to worry. At least in my opinion. Running back 5 in PPR points per game last year. This dude ranked 2nd in yards per carry, 1st in yards per touch, 3rd in juke rate, 1st in breakaway run rate. This is a team with a quarterback in Tua Tagovailoa who loves to check the ball down. This is with a head coach in Mike McDaniel who, at least early in the game, is willing to commit to the run. He is on an offense in a team that is going to be blowing the back out of defenses in a lot of games, and they'll be able to churn the rock later. I get they drafted Jalen Wright, but I think Jalen Wright is the replacement plan for Raheem Mostert in the future next season. So while Raheem Mostert is there, while I still like Raheem Mostert more than consensus, because I think people are still just kind of overthinking him as well, I think that Devin A-Chain is in a great situation, again, to succeed. And if he plays in all 17 games, he could be a top 5 guy. Moving to running back number 11, we got Travis Etienne. Now, we kind of saw a season that ended off on the wrong foot last year for Etienne and the whole Jaguars, right? The Jaguars were on top of the world. The Jaguars were looking like maybe the 1 seed in the AFC, the team with the bye, the team to beat. And then Trevor Lawrence gets hurt and everything goes downhill from there. Travis Etienne was the running back 3 in PPR and the running back 7 in PPR points per game. Now, I was personally someone that entering into last season was not the highest on Etienne. I worried that Tank Bigsby was going to be able to take away his goal line carries, and Tank Bigsby sucked ass last season. Now, I still think I got a little bit of love for Tank Bigsby, so I won't be ready to say he's a certified bum yet, but I don't really think he holds a candle to Etienne. Etienne scored 12 total touchdowns last year, 6th. He was 5th in receiving yards, 6th in receptions, 7th in targets, 11th in rushing yards, 4th in carries, 4th in evaded tackles with 69. Very nice, I like. 9th in yards per reception, 15th in yards per route run. Travis Etienne could easily rip off 75 plus targets again. I think the offense should be slightly better with this new movement they've been making. Now, I get that they lost Calvin Ridley, and the movement I'm talking about is they add Gabe Davis and they add Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU in the first round. So while Trevor Lawrence hasn't necessarily lived up to his expectations in the NFL so far, in my opinion, if you watch the tape, he's very solid, and this should be an offense that is able to get back to playing how they were last year. Do I think they're going to be the 1 seed in the AFC? Probably not, right? That's really how good they were playing early on in the season. But I think Etienne is not necessarily overlooked. You might even say I'm overlooking him because, Nick, he finished as the RB7 last year in points per game, and you got him as the running back 11. Something to understand, again, with these tiered rankings. These guys are all very close, especially early on, like the B, the C tier, my confidence level is just a little higher in the guys in the B tier. As you get later is when the real drop-offs start to occur, which we'll see ever so shortly. Shout out to Kyler Murray. At number 12, we got Kyren Williams. Now, Kyren Williams last season was a volume monster. 19 carries per game, 95.3 rushing yards per game. He had 200 plus receiving yards. He scored 15 fucking touchdowns, third at running back. The problem was he wasn't able to stay healthy. Entering into this year, he has a foot issue in OTAs. Now they're saying, oh, he'll be fine. He'll be fine. Don't worry. He's going to be okay by training camp. Let's see. He's a guy with a history of injuries. Now, again, I'm as much of a doctor as one of the dudes you see on the hub lay a pipe for that ass like he's a plumber, right? Johnny Sins style. I get it. I'm not a doctor. But I don't think you need to be a doctor to be a little bit worried about this. Running back 2 in PPR points per game, again, he is really good. He's going to not have that crazy workload because they brought in Blake Corum. So regardless of injury, his workload is going to decrease. Now, could he still be amazing with the decreased workload? 100%. But with the injury concern right now, where we're sitting in June, I'm just not comfortable ranking him higher than this. Now, if we get to the late August, early September, when you start to do your fantasy football drafts, and bada bing, bada boom, step inside the room, Kyren Williams is fully good to go, then I'll move him up the rankings. But right now, I think it's just a little bit risque to rank a little bit higher. It's some risky business. Shout out to that movie. 8th in true yards per carry last year, 9th in yards created, 2nd in dominator rank, 13th in yards per touch. Again, the guy has the skills. Just don't know if he can stay healthy. At number 13, we got Joe Mixon of the Houston Texans. Now, Joe Mixon is another guy that I think people are just taking a deep sleep on. People are snoozing big time. They're hitting their alarm. They're snoozing the alarm when they think about Joe Mixon. There's another guy that you can get a lot later, in my opinion, for really no reason. Now, it's not like he's a 10th round pick, but I think he should be going inside like the top 3 rounds. A lot of time he does not go there. Joe Mixon, I get he's a little bit older. He's a little bit worse than he used to be, but he is now on a fucking offense with CJ Stroud, Tank Dell, Nico Cousin, Let's Go Bowling Collins, and Stephon Diggs. In CJ Stroud's second year, we saw Devin Singletary put the cleats on and look like Jonathan Taylor out there, right? He looked fantastic, and Devin Singletary isn't very good. The system is great, and Joe Mixon is solid. Joe Mixon on a Cincinnati Bengals team that was up and down all season long. Joe Burrow's injured to enter the season. They're not good. They're bad. They're bad. Oh my gosh, they're terrible. And then Joe Burrow's back healthy. Oh my gosh, they figured it out. And then boom, they get smacked with the fucking steel chair, WWF style, to the back of the head, and they're dead again. They're flopping around like a fish out of water, right? Joe Burrow's hurt, and throughout all that, Mixon was fine. Running back 6 in PPR, 11 in PPR points per game. His downfall was the offense not being the best because they did get his game script taken out of the game, right? Because you can't really run the ball when you're getting pounded from the back. 6th in total touchdowns, 6th in yards created, 10th in dominator rank, 14th in evaded tackles. I get Joe Mixon isn't the same Joe Mixon from a couple of years ago, but I don't think you need the most efficient back. I don't think you need that old Joe Mixon. You don't need all that juice for Joe Mixon to get loose and have a great season. Again, this is a team you want pieces of, and I think you want a big piece of Joe Mixon. Moving now to the D tier, running backs 14 through 16. James Cook was a guy that, to me, didn't perform as well as, like, when you look at the stats, he was running back 19 in PPR points per game. Like, that's not the best. But he was a guy that really impressed me on tape when I was watching the games. Sure, they bring in Ray Davis in the NFL draft, but I don't think Ray Davis is going to steal James Cook's job in any way. James Cook's a guy that's going to get 50-plus targets again. James Cook is in an offense, sure, where Josh Allen's going to vulture some touchdowns, and yeah, that's going to be frustrating. Only 6 total touchdowns last year. But while they lost Diggs, I still think the Bills' offense is going to be really solid, right? They're still going to be fine, and they need to use James Cook's explosiveness. He ranked 12th in true yards per carry, 5th in yards per touch, and 3rd in expected points added at the running back position, rushed for 1,122 yards last season, over 50 targets, almost 500 receiving yards. This guy's really good. He's really good. The only thing keeping him and these other guys outside of the C tier, again, I get Kyron's a little bit more risky, so I guess I kind of have to take Kyron out of the argument for this, but I just feel a little bit more comfortable with the other situations. But again, this is not to belittle a guy like James Cook, a guy that he can catch the ball and he's fucking gone, right? He's like the Flash. So I'm very excited about James Cook here in Buffalo. And again, while June is getting closer to August, don't take these rankings as the prophecy, right? Don't take these rankings as something that are just locked in till August, because things are going to change by then, and ADPs are going to be changing, all that stuff as well. 15, we got Rachaad with 2A's White. Now, Rachaad White was a running back last year that, in terms of yards per carry, wasn't very efficient, right? He was about as effective as trying to use a Snickers bar wrapper as a condom, using something that isn't an actual condom, right? Like trying to use some of that, is that cellophane wrap? What's the wrap called? Like a sandwich wrap, like you wrap your sandwich in, or like a fucking Ziploc bag. And I know someone that used a Ziploc bag back in high school to do the deed. Respect to you, sir. But with that said, what was I saying? Like with that said, we're talking about some stupid shit. We need to lock in here. We're already balls deep into this video and we're only on running back 15. So with that said, while he wasn't the most effective back, the interior offensive line, very suspect. I was hearing Bush talk about this last season and it kind of clicked in my mind. Hey, Bush, Fantasy Stock Exchange, shout out to him. Great friend of mine, great guy. I love Bush, but pause. But yeah, double pause, I guess. But what I was saying here is, while he wasn't dealt the best hand offensive line-wise, he was still second in yards created, 6th in evaded tackles, 5th in yards per reception, 13th in yards per route run, 2nd in carries, 14th in rushing yards, 9th in targets, 4th in receptions, 3rd in receiving yards, 12th in total touchdowns. I like Baker. I like this offense projection-wise. Rachaad White seems like a pretty safe bet this season. Running back 4 last year, 10 in PPR points per game. Just so many running backs that I like this year. And then we're going to get to the point where I don't like the running backs as much, which is, again, coming up kind of shortly. At number 16, we got Aaron Jones. Now, I think Aaron Jones is going to be an incredibly polarizing player entering into this season. Not only is he on a Minnesota Vikings team with a quarterback that's very polarizing in JJ McCarthy, but he kind of fell off last season. Now, he was hurt, and something about Matt LaFleur and the Green Bay Packers is when you're hurt, they're going to put you in the game, but they're not going to really put you in the game, right? They're going to just insert the tip metaphorically. And then for games, you're like, man, when are they ever going to load Aaron Jones? And they kind of just didn't truly do it. Now, towards the end of last season in the playoffs, we saw the Aaron Jones that we are used to. But for basically the whole entire season, we were just strung along on the hope that Aaron Jones would take over again, and he never really did. He was 15th in true yards per carry, 14th in yards per touch, 15th in yards created, only 3 total touchdowns last season. I think the Minnesota Vikings, with JJ McCarthy, what they're going to do is run the ball. Now, I know they gave the big bag to Justin Jefferson, they got Jordan Addison, they got TJ Hawkinson, all guys that are going to get theirs. But the game plan is going to be run the rock. They paid Aaron Jones for a reason. They got Ty Chandler behind him. My biggest concern with Aaron Jones is just his injury history, his health. Otherwise, I'm pretty convinced that he is actually going to really kind of drop the jaw, metaphorically, of a lot of fantasy players who are kind of just counting him out here and kind of just counting out the Vikings as a whole. Moving now to the E tier, running back 17, we got Alvin Kamara. This is another guy that I've seen people run clear away from, right? They hear the name Alvin Kamara and they just get spooked. What about his stats from last season should scare you? Sure, I understand that if you saw Alvin Kamara out in the open, you might be a little bit scared because he got suspended last season for the first couple of games because he hit a motherfucker with the right hand of Mike Tyson, okay? But at the end, he hit him with one of those big... Anyone ever have one of these as a kid? If you're around my age, I'm 25, I'm getting old, oh geez, right? Halfway into the grave, basically. If you're my age, they had those big things. You put it like around your hand. It was this huge thing. And I don't remember what it was called, and he would like punch people with it. If you know, you know. Someone's going to know if you're watching this far in the video, and then you can let me know. But Alvin Kamara, what a guy, like UFC champion potentially. But what we're actually talking about here is Alvin Kamara is going to catch a lot of passes. I get they're going to try to use Kendre Miller more. But when he was number 2 in targets, number 2 in receptions, 6th in receiving yards in just 13 games, that has to tell you something. 2nd in target share, 4th in yards per route run. Derek Carr is a check down merchant. Derek Carr sometimes can't read the fucking field, right? It looks like the number is like he has dyslexia for the field, right? He's like Stevie Wonder out there trying to throw the football. But you want to know who he can see? Alvin Kamara standing 4 yards away from him. He was averaging 6.7 targets per game. I get Alvin Kamara is another guy getting a little bit older, but he was the running back 3 in PPR points per game. People are all jumping on the Kendre Miller bandwagon. And while I like Kendre Miller as a late round upside pick if something was to happen to Alvin Kamara, I think Alvin Kamara keeps his spot as the main man on this team. And as long as Derek Carr is there, check down boy over there, then Alvin Kamara is going to be pretty successful. At number 18, we got Kenneth Walker. Now, Kenneth Walker, to me, feels like a very vanilla fantasy football pick, a very non-risky pick, but there's not a lot of fun in it, right? Kenneth Walker isn't like missionary sex, right? Because if you're with a chick that has some huge honkers, you can look at that, you can stare into the woman's eyes, it's very sensual, right? But it's not the most fun, right? We all know you do other things. It's not even like Kenneth Walker is basically just like a dry hand job. Now, it'll probably get the job done, but it's not going to feel the best. Kenneth Walker is very boom or bust in the game, right? He gets the carry, and that shit's either going for 15 yards or he is getting stuffed like some crust at Pizza Hut, okay? And it's a little bit concerning. Geno Smith, is he really going to get better now? I think the offense is going to change philosophy-wise with Pete Carroll gone, but that could also lead to Zach Charbonnet, who got drafted last season, to see more of a role. So while I like what I see on tape out of Kenneth Walker at times, he just feels like a pretty meh pick. I think he's going to be the guy, but I think they're still going to use Zach Charbonnet, and I don't really like Geno Smith. I think he's going to be better than last year. I just can't buy fully into Kenneth Walker. I was out last year, right to do so. I'm kind of out again. I'm right by where he gets drafted in a lot of leagues, so I guess I'm not like full on jumping off the ship. But when I select Kenneth Walker, I'm not thinking, wow, like fucking Owen Wilson. Wow, what a great pick. I'm thinking, oh, I got Kenneth Walker. Could be worse, I guess. 2nd in juke rate, 3rd in evaded tackles, 39th in true yards per carry. He's fine. All I got to say about him. At number 19, we got David Montgomery. Now, David Montgomery is going to, in my opinion, see some of those touches, we've already talked about this, scraped away from him, siphoned away from him. Now, he's not going to fully Houdini. He's not going to disappear. Still going to be there. If something was to happen to Jahmyr Gibbs, knock on wood, we don't refer injuries, David Montgomery could be a top 5 running back every single week and would be a top 5 running back in my rankings in this offense. Now, he's still going to score probably 10 plus touchdowns because of how prolific this offense is, and he's a decent back. He was 6th in defenders in the box. They're loaded up for him, and he was 17th in true yards per carry. He rushed for over 1,000 rushing yards. He got 100 plus receiving yards, and he scored 13 total touchdowns. Again, I'm not going to sit here and wax poetic about how much I think David Montgomery is really going to outperform expectations, because I don't necessarily think he will. I just think he's a very safe running back too every single week, with the upside of, hey, if something happens to Jahmyr Gibbs, knock on wood, he could be a top 5 guy weekly. And he's very safe too, right? We're in fantasy football, we always like to hunt for the upside. And I agree, I love hunting for the upside. But if David Montgomery is your running back 2, your running back 1 is Breece Hall, Christian McCaffrey, one of these guys, or maybe just a guy I like better than some other people, right? Like Devin A-Chain, or maybe even someone a little bit safer, like Derrick Henry, Isaiah Pacheco, and you got that upside. And now you got the nice safe pick of David Montgomery. And since you drafted running backs this way, where you didn't load up super heavy on running back early, you got these loaded receivers. You might have Travis Kelce. You might have an elite quarterback. And then David Montgomery's just a running back too, churning out points every single week, with the upside, because he's on the Lions, to score 2+ touchdowns in any given game. Again, You don't have to be a fucking genius to figure out that you want pieces of the Lions offense and that Dave Montgomery isn't really going anywhere. Sure, the touches will decrease. I can almost guarantee it. He's not going to go out there and catch 50, 60 balls, something crazy. He's probably not even going to catch 20 passes, right? Caught 16 last year because of Gibbs. Gibbs was to get hurt again. Knock on wood, the ceiling is there. And if not, he's a very safe floor play with some decent ceiling as well in any given game because of the Lions. At number 20, we got Ramondre Stevenson. Now, I think any situation, regardless of quarterback, either Jacoby Brissett or Drizzy Drake May, it's actually Drizzy Drake London, so we got to think of another nickname for Drake May. But Drake May, either way, it's better than Mac Jones. Mac Jones is a laughing stock, in my opinion. Mac Jones is a certified bum. Bill Belichick, I mean, I still think Bill Belichick can coach, but it just wasn't working. Nothing was working. He's been fired. You're fired. Celebrity Apprentice style. Gerard Mayo's now the head coach. Ramondre Stevenson was very bad last season. I was president of the Ramondre Stevenson fan club, and I'm still the president, but it didn't work, okay? And I'm ready to acknowledge when stuff does not work. I'm fine admitting when I'm wrong. I'm going to admit and gloat when I'm right, but there's players that I'm wrong about, right? Every single year. Last year, I said, don't draft Alvin Kamara, and I looked like a buffoon, okay? But this year, I like Alvin Kamara more than I did last year, and I like Ramondre Stevenson last year. It didn't work out. But again, I don't really blame him fully. Sure, did Zeke look good last season? Yes. Was Stevenson kind of stinky? Yes. But the offense as a whole completely fell apart. They fell off the edge of the mountaintop. They fell off a wall. Is that what Humpty Dumpty falls off the wall? Yeah, like Humpty Dumpty, okay? Stevenson is good. I've seen it. I've seen him play well. He feels like a pretty safe pick. And if the Patriots are able to outperform expectations, maybe they run the ball a lot, Stevenson could definitely outperform running back 20. Moving down to the F tier, we got just one running back, and that's Zamir White all by myself. Now, Zamir White's a guy that I'm not seeing a lot of people really talk up, despite the fact that I think a majority of casual players, and I'm definitely not a casual player, but I really like Zamir White. It seems like more than other people, but he's kind of, Zamir White's funny because 3 years ago, you see Zamir White in the final games of the season, 4 out of 5 starts, he's over 100 all-purpose yards, averaging 3.2 targets per game. People would draft this motherfucker at the end of the first round. We remember just a couple years ago how running back heavy fantasy football was. I'm the idiot that bought into Kerryon Johnson. I'm the idiot that buys into Kenyon Drake, right? A couple years ago. But I've kind of changed my philosophy, my way of thinking, and so has a lot of fantasy players, right? No longer when some guy has a huge push to the end of the season, they become the starting back, do they get just jolted up so high to where it's basically destiny that they are going to fail. Zamir White isn't in that range. Like, he is that guy, but it's no longer where you have to pay the price for that, right? Again, 4 out of 5 starts, over 100 all-purpose yards, averaging 3.2 targets per game. With the head coach there, with the quarterback being Gardner Minshew, I think they're going to want to run. Josh Jacobs is in Green Bay, as we already talked about. Sure, they have Dylan Lobb and some other running backs behind White. I think White's the best out of that grouping. Now, I'm not ready to put him with the other guys because they just feel like I've seen Alvin Kamara be really good. I've seen Kenneth Walker look really good his rookie year. Seen Montgomery. We've seen Stevenson. There's just a little bit more unknown about Zamir White. There's just 4 games of greatness, but he has it in him. We've seen that dog, and he's got that dog in him. It's like an old school saying at this point. You sound like a fucking unk if you say that shit. But Zamir White is still solid. He's on a team that's going to want to run the ball. Are they going to be great? No, they're not. They're the Raiders after all, but shout out to the Raiders, but I think Zamir White will be fine, and I like his upside of top 12, top 12 games. I think he's got that in him, and he only scored 1 touchdown last season. I think he gets a little bit more this season, at least more than 1. So now into the G tier, we got running backs 22 through 24, Raheem Mostert, Jonathan Brooks, and Najee Harris. Now I'm higher on Raheem Mostert than others because while I love Devin A-Chain, like Raheem Mostert's just going to get touches. Raheem Mostert, sure he's older, and again, I want to be on Devin A-Chain, but I can't just turn a blind eye to Raheem Mostert. He was really good last year. I talked him up, and he hit. I talked up A-Chain, and he hit. Okay? And I think both these guys are going to end up hitting again. Raheem Mostert is getting buried down these rankings, right? He is in the deep depths of a fucking cave that Indiana Jones. Why did I just lag like that? That Indiana Jones, and we're not editing that out. That Indiana Jones searched for, right? In that type of a cave, okay? Raheem Mostert is on the Dolphins. And again, their offensive line's a little bit worse. I think the offensive line will be fine. I hope they bring back Connor Williams. I hope as a Dolphins fan. Raheem Mostert is on a team with, you want to know who Mike McDaniel used to be under? Shanahan. Great rushing scheme in Miami. He was the running back 5 in PPR last year, 4 in PPR points per game. Again, I think A-Chain's going to be taking more of the load. Okay? But he was 11th in true yards per carry, 7th in juke rate, 6th in breakaway run rate, 10th in evaded tackles, 8th in dominator rating. He scored 21 total touchdowns last season. 21. Can you do something for me? 21 touchdowns. He's going to score that again? No. But if something happens to A-Chain, again, I'm not rooting for injuries. I love A-Chain. Like, with where you're getting Raheem Mostert, to me, it's so obvious that you should be taking him. I don't know what people are thinking. I really don't. People are so scared of the older running backs nowadays. People are so... They literally are like, oh my God, I love these new age running backs. Let me draft Trey Benson over Raheem Mostert. Trey Benson might be holding James Conner's jock strap for 17 games. Well, let me draft him instead of Raheem Mostert. People are so stupid, dude. And again, now it's going to come back to bite me, right, when Trey Benson's like the running back 1, and I just said this, but I really think people are really overthinking a lot of these older running backs. People are so ready to just throw them out into the garbage. At number 23, we got Jonathan Brooks. Now, Jonathan Brooks coming off of a torn ACL last November against TCU, I believe, but he was a second-round pick. Everything checks out to where he's going to be fine. He's on the Panthers. The Panthers stink on paper. They're probably not going to be great again. They got new head coach Dave Canales, who loves him. New head coach. They bring in a running back in the second round. They're going to use that running back. I like Chuba Hubbard. Jonathan Brooks is going to start over him. I like Rashad Penny, silver Rashad Penny guy. Rashad Penny was brought in by Dave Canales, but I don't think that's going to really play too much of a factor into things. They still got Miles Sanders. That guy sucks. Okay? Jonathan Brooks is good. He has everything that the team wants. Again, Canales has sung praises for him. Okay? He was singing like Junior Soprano sings opera. Beautiful. Okay? Brooks is a bigger back. He's got the range. He's got the girth, the tonnage. He didn't actually say that. He brings a lot to the versatility standpoint. He did say that. Then he's got the patience, the contact balance, the vision, the acceleration. He's got it all. Best back in the class. They like him a lot. They're going to use him a lot. Now, is Jonathan Brooks like the safest guy on here? I don't think so. Brand new. It's going to take some time for him to get fully integrated, but I still like him. And at number 24, we got Najee Harris. Now, the fact that Arthur Smith is there really just blows my mind that guy is still employed by an NFL team. And it bothers me that he is now going to be controlling Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren's destiny. I still think Jaylen Warren might be better than Najee Harris, but I think just the fact that they drafted Najee Harris so highly all those years ago, they're just going to keep using him that way. The offensive line was dick last season, 54th in run block rating for Najee. It's got to get better. The quarterback play should be better, whether it's Mr. Unlimited or Justin Fields. I think he's a pretty safe bet to rip off 1,000 rushing yards. He only scored 8 touchdowns last year. Again, if I was at war, I wouldn't be writing home about Najee Harris. But, like, he's a pretty safe bet to be running back 22 through 26 weekly. Again, it's not the best, but there's still some upside in him. Like, we've seen it. Saw it in college at Alabama. We've seen it at the NFL level. He's definitely digressed, but he's still young. And if the offense is just better, he'll be fine. But again, the fact that Arthur Smith is there is what's really holding me back from potentially liking him more. It's really just that. Like, Arthur Smith is so bad that it just blows my mind. So thank you guys all so much for watching. If you did end up enjoying today's fucking Declaration of Independence length video, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button down below while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not. Make sure you leave a like on today's video to help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter or X, please do so at NotoriousFantasy. Check out one of the videos on your screen if you haven't seen them already. Love you guys. As always, have a great one. We'll be back tomorrow with another banger. Good boy.